State of the Union last night. He says that he liked the speech, but he also would have liked to have heard more details from the president when it comes to creating jobs. Congressman Chris Lee represents the state's 26th district. That stretches from Rochester to Buffalo. He's joining us tonight from the Queen City. Thanks very much for your time, Congressman.
Glad to be on tonight.
You made it out of Washington just in time. Apparently they've been socked by snow, so it's a good thing. Welcome home.
A couple inches in Baltimore that is a snowstorm for them. So
right.
Fortunately, I got out. I'm just glad to be on.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you. I want to talk to you a little bit about the speech. Generally speaking, the New York delegation, the Republicans in the New York delegation, had fairly positive things to say. Just start with the positive, if you would. There were a lot of bones that the president threw, I thought, to Republicans. He talked about cutting spending, which of course is something Republicans like, and he talked about fiscal discipline and government consolidation, all Republican notes.
Sure. I think politically he had to come closer to the center, and he did do that. He always delivers a good speech. This has been the third State of the Union that I've had an opportunity to sit in on by the president, but the one thing you learn that at the end of the day your results have to match the rhetoric. And I've heard some of the same things over the last few speeches, and I always, give them the benefit of the doubt, but at the end of the day, it's your report card that counts. And where it really lacked results in my mind is what I've been getting hit up by Western New Yorkers for the last 2 years, and that is, what are we going to do to turn around this economy, and also, how are we going to rein in this deficit? And what the president threw out really was a token solution. Freezing spending at 2010 levels is really going to do, it is a drop in the bucket when you realize that in the last 2 years, the administration and the Democratic-led Congress raised the budgets all double-digit. So you're locking in at a much higher rate. It really isn't going to solve the problem.
Well, what the House Republicans actually wanted to do, just a few hours before the president spoke, passed a resolution, if I'm not mistaken, to bring spending down to 2008 levels. Now, I understand the sentiment.
We did.
Yeah, you did. Okay, and with even a few Democrats sprinkled in there, but mostly Republicans who voted yes. I understand the sentiment, and of course, it's in keeping with all of the campaign pledges that were made. But right before the president spoke, I mean, what was the point of that? Was to send a message, to one-up him, to just pressure him a little bit more?
Well, we aren't privy to what the president is going to produce at the speech. I think he missed an opportunity. I think most Americans are applauding the fact that we are trying to get serious about our spending. The moment we do that, businesses will start to realize that we're serious about this, and they'll bring a higher level of confidence. There's literally about $2 trillion that businesses are sitting on in terms of cash that we could pump back into this economy, but simply they want to know what the rules are, eliminate the uncertainty, and reform our tax code. If we start leading by example, we can get this economy turned around.
Well, the president did talk some about reforming the tax code, did he not?
He did, and I was actually pleased about that. I was fortunate enough to get on the Ways and Means Committee, and my subcommittee is on tax reform, or excuse me, select revenue, which will focus on tax reform. We've already had hearings, and it is one of the single biggest issues that we need to take. Our tax code is so antiquated, non-competitive, and when businesses, both domestic and international, want to set up shop here in the United States, we want to be competitive, and right now we're not. And that's where there should be a bipartisan solution to make this a more attractive place for people to invest in.
I want to talk for a minute about the Republican response, if you don't mind. It was delivered by Paul Ryan. He's a Wisconsin Republican. And, he spent much of the day getting sort of buffeted around by Democrats who sent out a lot of press releases and went on a lot of national TV shows and talked about him as the enemy of Social Security. He's got this plan for retirees to invest some of their Social Security taxes in personal investment accounts, and also to have older Americans have a fixed payment to buy certified private health insurance in place of traditional Medicare. I'm curious if you personally support that, and also if you think that he was the appropriate person to bring the message of your party.
I have the utmost respect for Paul Ryan. He is a very sharp, thoughtful individual, and he takes his job seriously. The issues you brought up were ideas he floated out there last year. The point is that we got to start having a serious dialogue on these issues Otherwise, we will drown in a sea of debt, and we will put all of our entitlement programs, be it Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, in jeopardy unless we come up with a long-term solution. So I applaud him for taking it head on and wanting to bring out the dialogue. Unfortunately, there's too many members of Congress. They're more concerned about keeping their job rather than talking about some of the tough issues. So I think he was the perfect individual. He's a young, rising star in the party, and he's committed to trying to do the right thing so that we're not mortgaging the future for the next generation.
Just to be clear, though, in terms of your personal position on what the sort of shorthand is privatizing Social Security, but are you open to looking at Medicare and Social Security and changing the way these programs are currently?
Well, Paul's views and mine are not always necessarily aligned, but the concept of bringing these out and discussing Social Security under its current form is not sustainable. So we need to look at everything from retirement age. What we need to make sure, let seniors know that their benefits aren't going to be cut, but someone who's not going to be retiring for another 20, 25 years has to be under the realization that things are going to change, and they're going to have to probably start socking away additional money. But it's the reality of the situation. If we ignore the numbers, ultimately we could bankrupt the whole system.
You know, he also had an interesting tone. I mean, the president struck this sort of conciliatory tone. He talked a lot about unity. He, right off the bat, recognized John Boehner. He spoke about Gabrielle Giffords. You also sat, I believe, with members of the delegation who are Democrats. Is that correct?
Brian Higgins and I were together at the State of the Union. He and I have had a good working relationship. Our politics are completely different, but when it comes to Western New York, we try to help each other. And that's really what it's supposed to be about, and I think what most of our constituents care about is doing something. The political bomb throwing doesn't get you anywhere.
So then the tone of Congressman Ryan's speech was also a little bit sharper. I mean, he was critical of the president. He talked about the possibility that he actually said, he used the words that bankrupt, if I'm not mistaken, that the overspending, which you also just referenced, by the Democrats was threatening the fiscal solvency of the country. The tone that he struck was pretty markedly different than the tone that the president struck. You mentioned, of course, because of the midterms and the shellacking that the Democrats took, that the president perhaps had to strike that pragmatic tone. But do you believe that Paul Ryan was on the money? Did he go too far?
Paul's a serious individual, but he does his homework. He heads up the Budget Committee, and he's dealing with reality. And unfortunately, as I say, most members in Congress and in the Senate have been hiding from these issues. And I think we got to have an adult conversation about what's going on and face these head on. And the solutions have got to be bipartisan in nature to fix this. But we're only cheating our kids and our grandchildren if we don't do something and do it now. The longer you hold off, the problem grows exponentially just based on the interest payments alone that we have to fuel. Right now we're sitting on a $14 trillion deficit. Just $3 trillion we've added since the president came into office. So it has been a rapid increase. Unless we get serious about this, we truly will be in fiscal straits.
You know, there also was another response that was delivered by Michelle Bachmann. It was not the official Republican response. She gave the response at the invitation of the Tea Party Express. There's now been some sort of talk about how that demonstrates that there is a divide in the Republican Party. Do you believe that there is a divide in the party? And are you concerned about the ability to balance sort of the people who are more moderate and like yourself coming from a Democratic state, and then people like Michelle Bachmann who are closer to the Tea Party?
I actually thought it was great. I think what our party's about is hearing a lot of different opinions, and at the end of the day, both messages resonated the same issue. We have fiscal problems that we have to go after and address. So I think Michelle coming forward and speaking was fine. The Tea Party helped drive many new members here to Congress, and her getting involved and representing a group is fine. I think we have to be inclusive, and we also have to realize the majority of Americans, doesn't matter if they're Republican, Democrat, align themselves with Tea Party, are all concerned about the fiscal straits that we're in right now, and they want us to solve it. So I think that's something that we can all unite behind.
Just in closing, real quickly, the president also made an appeal,
Sure.
it sounded like. He took a stand on the health care reform law. He said he was open to what sounded like tinkering around the edges, some changes, but not, of course, the full repeal that the House has actually voted to pass. Do you believe, he asked that you deal with this and move on. Do you believe that the issue of health care reform is actually going to be central to the 2012 elections?
It's definitely something that we have to fix, but this Congress, we have to focus on economic issues as well. But I mean, the president used this analogy about how dysfunctional the government is when they talk about the Interior Department has responsibilities over salmon
Right.
that go upstream in fresh water.
Right.
And then the Commerce Department has it over salt water and so forth. But ironically, he was a huge proponent of a health care bill that is going to create 160 new bureaus, agencies, commissions. So at one point he was saying that this thing is very dysfunctional. At the same time, he's a proponent for growing this huge bureaucracy. And that's the part where the rhetoric and the results don't necessarily match up.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you for joining us. It's good to see you, and I'm glad you made it home safely. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. Glad to be on.